Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to be back with you here on this Monday ahead of a big weekend in pro football and the big weekend in college football to come. Plenty of action with the college football playoffs, bowl games ahead of us as well, and naturally some NBA and college basketball, but no doubt we're football focused here on this Monday. We'll get to the very latest with Vinnie Iyer from Sporting News. Also, our SportsGrid insider Adam Caplan has the very latest among some of the games we'll talk about in the NFL. What a wild one it was yesterday. Lived up to the billing, honestly, between Buffalo and Detroit. Most points scored in a single game this season, so we'll get to that as well. So stick around with us throughout the show as we break it all down for you. Also, Pat Evans has an update on sports betting potentially coming to the state of South Carolina. That and a whole lot more as we get the ball rolling here on this Monday with the big injury that we're still waiting on some clarification from, which could affect the next couple of games, including the Christmas Day game for the Kansas City Chiefs, as Patrick Mahomes left yesterday's win against the Cleveland Browns with what they're calling is a high ankle sprain. At least that's what they're saying for the time being. Right now, it would appear that Mahomes very much in question to play this coming week. It remains to be seen if he'll be able to play on that Christmas Day game. This came late in the game, by the way. Kansas City was already up 21-7 in this game. A dominating defensive performance for KC for sure. But the focus right now has to be on Mahomes, who said adrenaline got him through and could have probably returned to the end of the game. But today we will find out his fate.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say right now. I mean, obviously, there's still adrenaline rolling, and usually it's kind of the day after when you kind of get a good sense of it. But I feel like I could have finished the game in different circumstances, but I thought the smart decision, I think we talked about, was to put Carson in, and he's played a lot of football, and he finished the game well.
Can you describe sort of exactly what happened or how you felt it?
Yeah, I was trying to run up in the pocket, obviously fourth down, trying to make a play happen. And as I threw the ball, I kind of got hit, and I haven't seen it, but it felt like someone hit me from behind as well. And so I kind of just got rolled up on. It kind of happens in football. And so tried to bounce back up, but obviously it hurt a little bit. But now we'll just get after the rehab part of it and try to be ready for next week.
Well, it's not broken. That's what I can tell. I mean, I just got off the field, so you know that, Sam. So I'm going to just see how it goes. I mean, it'll literally be day to day as we go forward. I don't know how much swelling he has or any of that, so or what will come, from now till whenever. So.
21-7, the final, as the Chiefs just keep on winning. Meanwhile, another quarterback injury in the Sunday night football game as the Green Bay Packers go to Seattle and win by a final of 20-13, a dominating 30-13, a dominating performance yesterday. As once Geno Smith left the game for Seattle, the Packers just simply had their way with the Seahawks. No word yet on how long Geno Smith will be out, but as we go to the Packers, Matt LaFleur, the head coach, said it was all about the defensive performance.
As part of our team effort, especially our defense, I thought they played a really good game. For 4 quarters, got constant pressure on the quarterback, got a couple takeaways. It was great to have Cooper, obviously, back. His stat line was pretty impressive, and he made some big-time plays. I think offensively we started fast and then stalled in the second half and didn't probably perform the way we'd like to, but you got to give them a lot of credit. I think that defense has come a long way. I got a lot of respect for Mike and his staff, Adam Caplan, for their ability to get those guys to play, and they play hard and they play the right way, and it's a good scheme, and so you got to give them a lot of credit. And but I also want to give a big shout out to our fans. I mean, I definitely was not expecting that many Packer fans in the stands. This is a tough place to play. It's extremely loud. And I was shocked when our defense was on the field and I could hear our Packer fans. So I definitely think that made a difference for us.
So much for the 12th man, Cheeseheads in Seattle last night. 90 points between the Bills and the Lions, with the Lions having a chance right at the end to come back. They couldn't stop Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills all day long. Detroit was a short 2.5-point favorite. Of course, this flew over the total. Josh Allen pretty much cemented his MVP candidacy, although Jared Goff had a huge game as well, over 400 yards passing in this one. Tons of offense, fun game. Well, we wondered why the Eagles were 5.5-point favorites against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Seemed like a fishy line. Indeed, it was. It was very easy. The Eagles just crushed the Steelers 27-13. Really wasn't much of a battle, as it looked like that was the right spread. And the Denver Broncos sparked a huge fourth quarter comeback, really led by the Indianapolis Colts. Running back Jonathan Taylor dropped the ball right before the end zone. Broncos came back from there and dismantled the Indianapolis defense 31-13. They also had a defensive touchdown on a strange offensive play as well. All right, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they go into Los Angeles and just keep on rolling. Baker Mayfield and company. Speaking of rolling, they rolled over the Chargers easily, 40-17 the final. Tampa Bay has now won 4 straight games. They lead the division. If Atlanta loses tonight, that could be the end of the line for them against the Raiders. Lamar Jackson also had a huge game yesterday against the New York Giants. Probably won't win MVP, but he did throw 5 touchdown passes, and the Ravens easily covered the spread. Saints took the Washington Commanders right down to the wire yesterday. A last-second touchdown gave the Saints a chance to tie to go to overtime, but they opted to go for a 2-point conversion and did not get it, so the Commanders win. They do not cover in that game, by the way. Jaden Daniels returned home and was happy to be in front of his fans with the win.
Life comes full circle. Starting my career here, coming back and playing my first year in the NFL in the Dome. It was nothing but love. It was nothing but love. Obviously, I'm happy that we won. I don't know if a couple people out there, Saints fans, might have some mixed emotions, but I was excited just to be able to play in front of them again.
Houston Texans capture the division again in the AFC South. It looks like they have put the Dolphins season to bed with a win 20-12 yesterday, as Houston did just enough coming out of their bye. Tua Tagovailoa, not his best performance, throwing a few picks in that one. 3 interceptions for Tua. One of the bigger stories that came out of that game is one of the wide receivers on the Dolphins, Grant Dubose, who came in for an injured Jalen Waddle, was hit in the head, had to be removed from the field on a cart. Tua talked about going through those situations himself in the past, certainly can relate.
I heard some good news that he's doing well, he's recovering. But we all know I've gone through something very similar, and that's no fun. You never want to be put in any of those situations, but you also understand that this is a physical sport, it's a contact sport. And again, I just think of what I could have done to have not put Grant in that situation.
Dolphins this week will take on the 49ers. Absolutely season on the line this week. Cardinals season was on the line every game the rest of the way. They took care of the New England Patriots 30-17. Kyler Murray briefly hurt in this one. Big game for James Conner on the ground. They cover the 6.5-point spread. Hey, the Bengals just keep on rolling offensively. They win 37-27 over the Tennessee Titans. Titans benched Will Levis in the game. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets finally get a win, 32-25 over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Huge game for both Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. Cowboys beat the Panthers on the road 30-14. And of course, Saturday night, in case you missed it, Travis Hunter ended up winning the Heisman Trophy Award. So congratulations to him. Pretty easy call there. Notre Dame making an announcement yesterday that they have extended Marcus Freeman, their head coach, as they get ready to play in the college football bowl game, with a statement yesterday saying the investment they continue to pour into our program is invaluable to our student athletes. The commitment goes well beyond myself. Meanwhile, Notre Dame is going to get their running back for the college football playoff coming up this weekend. Jeremiah Love, Howard Cross III. They will play in South Bend against Indiana. The Army-Navy game, Army was a 6.5-point favorite. Didn't matter at all. Navy went in and dismantled Army 31-13. And I don't know why, but Marshall has opted out of their bowl game against Army, losing a bunch of players to the transfer portal. So Louisiana Tech is going to fill in to play Army in their bowl game. And also Michael Van Buren has committed to LSU after leaving Mississippi State. In the NBA last night, LeBron James returned, and he helped the Lakers beat the Grizzlies by a final of 116-110. The Mavs win a 143-133 game, with Luka having 45 points yesterday. We'll be right back with Vinnie Iyer. Don't go away.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this bet than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. What he texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Vinnie Iyer is with us from Sporting News. We'll recap a couple of games in the NFL. We'll go to the marquee ones and then work our way around the league. Everybody was playing, of course, the teams that played on Thursday and Monday. Different story. We'll preview that as well. Vinnie, welcome back. I know a big weekend in the NFL. Naturally, every weekend at this point is kind of a big weekend. And so, last night's game, I did think on paper had the makings of a really good one. but the Packers went up big early, and then Geno Smith got hurt, and then we were left with nothing, basically, in the second half of that game. So, I mean, I don't really know if it's any indication necessarily of how good Green Bay is, but Seattle is in some trouble here if Geno Smith is out.
Yeah, and we have maybe an indication that there's not a lot of great NFC teams, right? I mean, we're not sure about the teams that are leading right now, Los Angeles Rams and Buccaneers in their divisions. I mean, you look at the Lions, Eagles, and then maybe it's the Vikings and the Packers, and that's it, right, in terms of the teams that you might say could make a deep run in the playoffs. Everyone else is kind of limping in there. Even Detroit had a lot of issues pop up that caught up to them with their defensive side. So Green Bay, unfortunately, lost that game last week to the Lions. So they're probably out of it for the division. We got the Vikings playing tonight. They're right in the thick of winning that division. So, again, it'll be interesting to see the pecking order of those three teams. But it would not surprise me if the Packers, Vikings, or Lions came out of the NFC at this point. But right now, you would have to say the Eagles are the trending toward being the best team. So, again, I think there's just a big separation there. And I don't think the NFC West or NFC South winner is going to be very competitive in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is Tampa Bay all of a sudden has gotten hot at the right time, and they did win a playoff game last year too. So let's see. All right, so Bills Lions definitely lived up to the billing. I know that the game wasn't as close really as it looked here. It was more or less a Buffalo domination. But every time the Lions got the ball, it seems like they went down and they scored two. 48-42, the final in this one. Josh Allen is the MVP of the NFL, open and shut case, nothing to talk about anymore. After 6 touchdowns last week, 4 this past week, 362 passing yards, 68 rushing yards. My gosh, Vinny, like he is putting on a show every week. And even at the end of the game, he had that, like, I don't know if you saw that little jump pass that they had to call back for a penalty. It seems like what they say, you know, the old days of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, player, you know, Brady in the zone. This guy is in the zone right now.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson tried his best with the 5 touchdown passes, but I think what helps Josh Allen is you're looking at the Bills and, like, they're giving up a ton of points. They don't have a lot, right? You don't look at a lot of wide receivers lighting things up for him. It's basically him carrying the whole offense and a little bit of James Cook when he needs it. And last week, James Cook wasn't a factor at all in the running game. So he's putting his team on his back. If you want to say that's the definition of MVP, along with great stats, he's got all that in his favor this particular season. Because, again, the Bills are a very flawed team otherwise when you look beyond Josh Allen. And same thing in the Lions. I mean, they have a lot of defensive issues, so these teams need to score points. That's why I think the Bills kind of said, we got to play and be aggressive, and Josh Allen needs to take over from wire to wire here to have any chance, because if our defense gets exposed to that Lions running game, we're going to be chasing and we're not going to be able to catch up. So I think that was the game plan, to be aggressive. I mean, Joe Brady's been fantastic calling plays to let Josh Allen loose. I mean, very similar to Liam Cohen with the Buccaneers. I mean, these are the two best probably play callers other than Ben Johnson in this game in the NFL right now, hottest play callers at least. So then the Bills and Lions are right there with all the Super Bowl contenders, but what they proved is they got to do it by scoring a ton of points because their defenses are just not good enough to hold it off. This is kind of reverse of the game last week against the Rams where the Bills lost. They were trying to kind of suck up that big deficit. This week it was the Lions kind of making it look a little bit better than it actually was.
Yeah, it's a good point with Joe Brady too, Vinny. It's kind of funny. Like Joe Brady, superstar in college at LSU, superstar play caller with the Buffalo Bills. What does that tell us? Don't go to Carolina. Nobody should go to Carolina because that's the only spot, it seems like. You know, Rule went right back to college. It just, I mean, who can succeed in that spot? It seems like no one. It's strange that Brady couldn't succeed there. All right, so the odds of the FanDuel Sportsbook, Vinny, have shifted a lot because of this Mahomes injury. Right now, Kansas City, they're still a heavy favorite to be the number 1 seed in the AFC at -195, but this was much, much higher going into the game yesterday. But now with the injury to Mahomes, I guess there's some suspicion that if he doesn't play this week and he doesn't play against, he doesn't play on Christmas Day, maybe there's a chance that the Chiefs let this slip away to the Buffalo Bills, which was unthinkable a week ago.
Yeah, this is a bit of a conundrum because they're just having enough of a cushion, 2 games, but they also lost the game to the Bills. So if the Bills and Chiefs end up with the same record, the Bills are going to have the number 1 seed. So that's a little bit of a problem here, and so is the schedule of games, right? You have Saturday against the Texans, you got to turn around and play Wednesday against the Steelers, and then you have a pretty tricky ending game as well if the Broncos are still fighting for a playoff spot. So these are not 3 gimme games. At least the next 2 are in Kansas City, which helps. So you have to weigh. Do you want to get Mahomes rest now? I think the ideal situation is somehow win games with Carson Wentz, and you get the bye week, and you've rested Patrick Mahomes beyond that. So I don't know. It really comes down to the Chiefs feel confident about playing Mahomes in a span of 4 days, Saturday to Wednesday. Is that a good thing for him going forward? So the bigger picture is just having him healthy. So they're in a little bit of a conundrum, and I've seen some early lines favoring the Texans. So maybe there's some things that Vegas knows about maybe Mahomes not playing this week.
Yeah, I would, based on everyone talking, it doesn't seem like Mahomes has any chance to play this week, but maybe on Christmas. All right, so it's the Alamo for Kirk Cousins here. This is it, Vinny. This is it. On the road against the Raiders. Too many rumors with Michael Penix popping up here. I think they got to win tonight, or they'll make a change. How do you feel about that?
They got to win for many reasons. They're going to make a change there. They're trailing the Buccaneers badly. They've owned them this season. So if they don't make the playoffs and get in there, I think it's going to be trouble for a lot of people on this team.
All right, fair enough, Vinny. Enjoy the games tonight. We'll see you again later in the week. Thanks again.
All right, thanks, Greg.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashed.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. It's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Tampa Bay Buccaneers are red hot. We've got 2 games on Monday Night Football tonight and a quarterback change in Tennessee. Those are our topics. Let's get it going now. It's time for the SportsGrid Sound Off. been a long line of disappointing quarterbacks for the Cleveland Browns, right? The last 20 years, you've seen that jersey that person has where they just keep scratching off the names of the quarterbacks on the Browns. They have failed in that category, but it is rare to see any quarterback that has played for the Browns go on to have a lot of success. Like, that has not happened. Baker Mayfield is the exception to that rule. My gosh, has he been fantastic for Tampa Bay. They've won 4 straight games, and he's playing like a Hall of Famer. 40 points again yesterday for the Buccaneers as they go on the road and take care of the Chargers. After the game, Mayfield talked about how everything is clicking for the Bucs.
This group that we have is really why we just had a good game. I mean, talk about the 2 turnovers we had in a row there in the first half. Defense stepped up, didn't let them score 2 touchdowns in a row, and that was really the turning point. Came into halftime, offense said if we don't inflict or hurt ourselves, we'll be all right. So defense came out, stopped them, and then offensive line took over, and that was really the biggest difference there in the second half. Those guys played unbelievable up front, and defense, complimentary football game.
22-32 on the ground. That's going to win a few games, huh?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a physical football team. That's what they pride themselves on, is rushing the ball and being physical, and so to flip the script on that is huge for us.
Can you talk about Mike Evans and just his ability to take over a game the way you did with him?
Obviously Mike's always had the game-changing ability within each play, but then, the scramble play where he works all the way across the field. He's the outside receiver on the right side, works all the way across, just trying to keep my eyes downfield, and he's always working, and he makes that play. Obviously makes the catch, but then after the catch is the big difference there. He just keeps going. Just keeps going.
Buccaneers in good playoff position, especially if the Falcons lose tonight. As far as the Titans are concerned, their season is over, and maybe Will Levis's time is over as quarterback of the Titans. Here's their head coach, Brian Callahan, of the QB switch.
Today wasn't his day. He had a couple bad picks, put us in some tough spots. So I made a decision to sit him down and try to give us a little bit of a spark. I think we had a series there. It was like 3 turnovers in like 7 plays or something. Again, not the fumbles necessarily weren't his fault, but one of them was. And those are things that you have to do sometimes for a quarterback when they're struggling a bit, and he was struggling today. So we'll see moving forward. We got to watch the tape and see what we can correct and how we can do it better. But definitely wasn't his day today.
Fans got up out of their seat, standing ovation once Will came out of the game. What do you make of that, to loudly hear from Titans fans how they feel?
I don't know. I don't worry about those things. I try to focus on how we can improve and get better. Fans react to what they react to, and don't have much control over it. And if that's the way they feel that way, they feel that way. There's nothing that I'm going to do to try to explain one good or bad. And so we're just trying to keep focused on what we can get better and what we can do to hopefully have it so they can cheer on a whole bunch of other things other than that. So that's kind of where I stand.
Looks like the Titans could be going with Mason Rudolph for the rest of the season. Remains to be seen. Let's get a preview of tonight's Monday Night Football games. A couple of big ones with playoff implications. Here is our very own Joe Madden with a preview.
It's Monday, and we're in for some great action out there in the Monday night doubleheader. We'll kick it off with the Chicago Bears taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Minnesota Vikings are a 7-point favorite in this one, total of 44.5. And we did see this matchup, the Vikings getting the win, but needing overtime to do so. The Chicago Bears, while they have been struggling, they were able to put up the points last time versus the Vikings. And I'm expecting in this one that we will see Caleb Williams have that connection with Keenan Allen. Give me Keenan Allen over 4.5 receptions in this one, and that anytime touchdown. When I look here at the Minnesota Vikings, you can't deny Sam Darnold getting that ball to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison to get in the end zone. I'll look at Jefferson's receiving prop to the over and Jordan Addison for the anytime touchdown. We'll then wrap up the night with the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, the Raiders are a home dog, and while that's tempting, I just can't get there. I will, though, look at Brock Bowers for his anytime touchdown. The tight end has been fantastic for this team, breaking records. And then we look at Kirk Cousins and his touchdown to interception ratio hasn't been pretty over the last 4 games. 0-8. Yes, 0 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I think Cousins finally has a big day here. I'm going to look at the Atlanta Falcons team total over 24.5 points. I will take Bijan Robinson for over 84.5 rushing yards. Back to you, Craig.
All right, thanks so much, Joe. Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report is up next. Don't go away.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. It's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Happy holidays to those of you who are watching. Let's bring in Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report. He's getting ready for these big bowl games coming up, college basketball season underway. Pat, great to have you back here on NewsWire. Really interesting report that you guys had last week about this congressional hearing that's coming up. I've been waiting for a story like this and to pop where they're going to review the Congress. They want to review everything that's happened since sports betting has been legalized and sort of the good things that have happened, the bad things that have happened. I think this is really important to take a look back, and it seems like that's what they're going to do. Been waiting on this one.
Yeah, this is really not a surprise, I think, to anybody who pays attention to the industry. I mean, if you listen to Legal Sports Report podcast, which I suggest everyone do, even though it might take you away from the grid, we Adam and Matt Brown have been talking about this for a couple of years now, about how eventually all the little tiny bad things that have popped up and made, little news nuggets will kind of snowball and turn into something that the, U.S. lawmakers need to pay attention to. And of course that, they often brought up how, on big poster boards, you'll have the kind of sometimes problematic tweets from sports betting accounts and things that bring responsible gambling really into the limelight. And I think Tuesday might be the first time we see this in reality. This year has been kind of a tough year in terms of news for the industry. A lot of negative things, from the scandals like the Ohtani scandal to the Alabama baseball scandal to all these things, continued scrutiny on the responsible gambling and maybe lack thereof measures that lawmakers kind of wish there were more of. All these kind of things, the glut of advertising that people who don't maybe sports bet or don't like sports betting kind of get annoyed at. And all of this has kind of bubbled up, snowballed, made U.S. lawmakers pay attention. Of course, we have a fairly significant piece of legislation called the Safe Bet Act that was written by Senator Richard Blumenthal and Representative Paul Tonko to kind of really put in a big framework of advertising guidelines to kind of really make more robust responsible gambling requirements to the nationwide situation. Then of course we have Senator Lee and Senator Welsh, who have sent a letter to the Federal Trade Commission this month to say, hey, let's look at the anti-competitive measures that FanDuel and DraftKings might be doing. And all of this, again, just kind of snowballed. So sure enough, Senator Dick Durbin has called a congressional hearing for tomorrow, 10 a.m., in the Senate Judiciary Committee that will just kind of take a look. I don't know yet kind of how many witnesses we're going to go through, how many kind of things we're going to be looking at specifically, but you can be sure that it'll kind of take a huge peek under the rug at this industry and see, exactly what's going on and how, maybe the U.S. government can affect it. And this is a heavy hitting committee, by the way. I mean, you just look at the list of legislators that are on it. You've got Dick Durbin and Richard Blumenthal. You have Lindsey Graham, Amy Klobuchar, Chris Coons, Cory Booker, Chuck Grassley, John Cronin, Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz. It's a kind of a who's who of senators that have been on the national stage at least somewhat in the last couple of years. And, this is going to be something that to watch and say, I wonder what's going on. I, of course, am a political nerd. I love these things, especially, in the last year or so, we've had some weird UFO ones that are kind of fun to watch. So this kind of could be a similar thing that kind of keeps the news going. Are there going to be some negative clips coming out about the sports betting industry that'll hit the mainstream media? Sure. Very likely. So I would be prepared for that if you're a big sports betting fan.
Yeah, I think we'll get all of that. And you can read more about it at Legal Sports Report. As Pat said, check out their podcast as well. Okay, some news with 2026 or 25 coming, maybe 426 is what I was sort of alluding to. South Carolina, maybe a new sports betting bill possible being put on the ballot. I see some interesting tax numbers too, reasonable, by the way, for state of South Carolina. I think 12.5% tax if they get this pushed through. Very preliminary. And I would guess, Pat, if this does happen, it would be more for 2026, but maybe past next year. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so a new bill coming out. It is bipartisan. It's got a Republican and a Democratic sponsor. So that's promising in itself because, of course, as we always talk about here, it is a very bipartisan issue. You need people on both sides of the aisle because of, dissenters on both sides of the aisle. Now, South Carolina is one of those southern states that sees a lot of, Republican conservative opposition to gambling. And as a Republican controlled state, that's kind of an issue in itself. We've heard a lot of things. There's rumors out there that Senator Lindsey Graham, of course, he's U.S., but he's probably the biggest political name in South Carolina, is against gambling. So it probably won't do anything until he leaves office. But also, they're getting kind of worked up in states around them that have sports betting. Of course, North Carolina went live, and I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on South Carolina. And I've heard from some proponents that it probably won't get anywhere until Georgia legalizes, which, again, that's something we've talked about ad nauseum the last couple of years of Georgia coming close, almost getting it done, not quite getting it done. They're going to be a front runner to get it done in 2025. Does that make it kind of a situation where South Carolina lawmakers say, we can do it too this year, or are we going to wait until 2026 after Georgia launches? We'll see there. But yeah, it's a fairly standard bill. You've got, 8 licenses, which I think is pretty sound for a state the size of South Carolina. To your point, a very industry-friendly 12.5% tax rate with full deductions for promos and federal excise taxes. So very industry-friendly. I think lawmakers there are starting to say, okay, most states in the union have done it. A lot of states surrounding us, including our North Carolina neighbor and nearby Tennessee, have done it. A lot of other neighbors are very close to kind of getting something done, whether it's Georgia getting sports betting done or Alabama starting to expand their gambling abilities, or at least thinking about it and nearing that. So yeah, South Carolina, definitely something to watch. I don't think they'll get it done in 2025, but, there's always surprises out there in the political world. And, as I'm working on my predictions over there at LSR for the holiday week in our look ahead and look back stories, I do think 2 states will get it done. What 2 states next year? I'm not sure, but South Carolina, they're a dark horse and could.
All right. So we'll keep them on our list for a possibility for 25 or 26. All right. Finally, I gave this story a click over at LegalSportsReport.com because it said that Michigan wants to increase taxes in sports betting. But honestly, I felt like you clickbaited me here, Pat. 1%? They can't get this passed? Why does FanDuel or DraftKings, why do they not want this to happen? Because they think this will set a precedent for the future or something? This is such a small tax hike if this is the case.
Yeah, I mean, to a larger topic that we've talked about quite a bit is the industry is worried about tax hikes. I mean, a lot of states are talking about it. A few states have done it, like Ohio and Illinois, after seeing New York come out with a 51% tax rate. So other states are like, hey, we're missing out. And now you've got Louisiana talking about potentially hiking it. And now, of course, Michigan. And yeah, to your point, FanDuel, BetMGM, I think DraftKings did as well, sent out emails asking their customers to write their legislators and say, please don't raise the tax. To your point, 1% doesn't seem that big. However, it could just be a starting point to get the discussion started. And then at some point, the lawmakers start to hike it even more. Who knows? It could go up maybe another 10, 15% if the amendments kind of flow in. So it's something the industry doesn't want to, kind of start thinking about. They just want it to stay status quo. And so Michigan, my state, will be one that I'll be watching closely this legislative session around that bill.
All right, Pat, thanks again for coming on NewsWire. I really appreciate it. You on the rest of this week? Am I going to see you again? Or
I'll be on Wednesday, hopefully celebrating a Michigan State win tomorrow night. So let's
all right.
think that way.
All right, Pat, have a great weekend or a great
too.
week. See you Wednesday. Weekend. It's only Monday. I guess I'm looking forward to that. All right, NFL games, of course, coming up Thursday. Some huge news in the NFL, certainly surrounding quarterbacks and injuries. Patrick Mahomes, Geno Smith, the Lions, defense. A lot of that going on. We'll check in with Adam Caplan, our SportsGrid insider, next to get the latest. So stay with us here on NewsWire. We'll be right back.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all people.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
Yeah, this is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashed.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh, yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. Like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Adam Caplan, our SportsGrid insider, is with us. And what if I told Adam Caplan we'd be getting ready for Carson Wentz this week and we'd be getting ready for Sam Howell this week? He would have said, oh my gosh, disaster has struck. Is that the case, Adam, here? Has disaster struck here in the NFL? Because I certainly am not counting on either of those two names performing at a high level moving forward.
Yeah, look, with Patrick Mahomes, you're always worried because, he's had ankle injuries before. Now, the last time he had a high ankle sprain, he actually played through it. And I never count him out. When you see a report that it says he's week to week, that means the team does not expect him to play this week. And look, being that they are in great shape here with the number 1 seed, and they continue to win, by the way, they're in good shape here. Now, it's all about the players. It's all about making a run. Now, Carson Wentz, I'm told, by the way, had a really outstanding spring. With Wentz, Craig, it's more about the mechanics and getting his feet set. That was the problem that kind of did him in Philly. And as you know, he kind of moved on to Washington and the Colts. But, he's there. They have an experienced backup. And then with Geno Smith, now they don't think that there's anything structurally wrong with that knee. But as you know, he couldn't come back in. They're on a sort of a shorter week here. So Sam Howell is the guy who came in. Tough deal. He played well last year with Washington with the craziness of how much they were throwing it. So at least they have a qualified back. It was pretty good. He's a pretty good athlete. But the greater story for Seattle is, Craig, is what happened to them. They got off to a terrible start. Even if Geno Smith finished the game, it wouldn't matter. They got stonewalled. They were awful last night. And that made that division now up for grabs.
Yeah, no, right now the Rams have to be feeling like they got a great shot if they can continue to play well. Battle of Pennsylvania goes to the Eagles. Relatively easy. I looked at this point spread last week and I was like, okay, something is off here. 5.5 given the Steelers. Well, odds makers, they're pretty much never wrong, Adam. And the Eagles dominated the Steelers pretty much from start to finish. Not really a close game, opening up the door again for the Ravens now to play the Steelers once again coming up, which is probably going to determine the division, although the Steelers still have a little leg up there. And we know that Philly now is in a position to potentially catch Detroit, but everything has to go right for them as well.
Yeah, and don't forget about Minnesota now. If they win tonight, they're tied with Detroit, which is crazy. That's the team that nobody saw coming, them in Denver. But let's get to the Eagles-Steelers game. Yeah, it was an interesting game in that, Jalen Hurts and the negativity surrounding him. We talked about this yesterday on the Pro Football Today show. And what I'd said really wound up happening. He's got to pull the trigger. Take the throws that are there. Stop holding on to the ball. And he pulled the trigger, Craig, and he had arguably his best game of the season. Certainly the best since week 1 where he played well in Brazil against Green Bay. And he got off to a great start. They were actually pretty aggressive calling pass plays. Kellen Moore, the offense coordinator, did that. He got Jalen off to a good start. And Jalen Hurts delivered in their defense, which honestly, if you look at all the metrics, they're the number 1 defense in the National Football League. Nobody thought that could happen this season. It did. They completely shut down Russell Wilson, a quarterback they'd never beaten before. Craig, he was 6-0 against them, including the playoffs, and they shut him down. So you're right. It was dominance. Now, the reason why I thought it was 5.5 is my personal line would have been 3. No George Pickens is absolutely huge. They couldn't do anything in the pass game.
Yeah.
They also couldn't get anything done in the run game. Then Elliott, who's a really good safety, he didn't play. To me, I understand why it was 5.5, but I do agree with you. That's a big number, but I could certainly understand. No George Pickens, no chance to throw the football.
Yeah, it does seem like Pickens is worth a point in the NFL, to say the least. Can Detroit survive all of these defensive injuries? I think they probably can, Adam, until they play, like let's say the Bucs or the Rams in a playoff spot. Then I would be worried about them because they're going to have a game like they did against Buffalo.
Yeah, I am worried. Now, it is interesting that offensively they're clean. Now, unless somebody comes in today and is not feeling right, they're going to have all their starters going forward on offense. But Lee McNeil, the D tackle, is really, really good, number 54. He's done for the season with a significant knee injury. That's concerning. They're down 3 inside backers. Arguably their best corner in Carlton Davis. Registrol, the second-round corner, is also on injured reserve. Their hope is he'll be back for the playoffs. So it's going to be hard. Yesterday was just one of those games where you scratch your head, like, how did this happen? The Bills, I got to give the Bills credit after that awful loss against the Rams. They really rebounded on the road, by the way, where they've not played so well. But, yeah, their offense is going to have to carry them. That's really the story now. Going forward and through the playoffs, they're not going to have McNeil. Remember, Hutchinson's not going to be back until late January if he comes back at all. There's hope that he'll be able to return at some point if they get deep into the playoffs. But they're reeling right now in defense. And I don't care how good your depth is. It's really hard to survive these injuries late in the season.
Broncos win, Dolphins lose. Feels like we know the AFC playoffs at this point, especially with Denver beating Indianapolis. I would also add, Adam, in that game. Now, again, I'm a prisoner of the moment here, but I think I witnessed the two worst offensive plays I've seen all season in the same game, with Jonathan Taylor dropping the ball before the goal line. And then what in the world was that play where they threw it to Downs? He threw it back. I called my son into the room. I'm like, you got to see, this is like the worst play I've seen all year. And the guy in Denver runs it all the way back for a touchdown. Colts are going to, I mean, I hate to say it because I love Jonathan Taylor, but the Colts are going to look back on this, Adam, and say their season imploded on that play.
Yeah, John Taylor stood up and he took responsibility for it. And it sucks if you're in the fantasy playoffs because you lose that touchdown. That was one of those plays where you go, I don't believe that just happened, but it did. It was certainly a crazy Sunday around the National Football League, but the story of that game is Denver. The odds makers gave the future numbers 5.5 to start the season. And by the way, I didn't disagree with it because Bo Nix was a guy that there were questions about whether he should have been a first-round pick, and good for Sean Payton. He wanted him badly. He got that right. Their defense is elite. Under Vance Joseph, you just couldn't see this. And you're right that there's all the playoff spots are done now in the AFC. That's over with. Just a matter, could Denver move up a little bit? Maybe, but Denver's an unbelievable story. And by the way, I vote in 2 polls. I'm going to have to rethink whether Sean Payton, nobody's considering Sean Payton to be coach of the year. How could you not right now?
Yeah, it's been a great year for him. Real quick, with the 49ers, Devondre Campbell, this player who refused to re-enter the game, looks like he's suspended by the 49ers the rest of the season. He and John Lynch got into it. Anything more out of this? Look, San Francisco just needs to end their season, Adam, at this point, right? It's just been a disaster.
Well, the players made the call here, first of all. The players would not play with him. Kyle Shanahan didn't want him on the team. So they were all in unison here. They were all united. Campbell won't play for them. And they're going to go after a signing bonus, which is $3.35 million. This is 2 players down. Deontay Johnson, now Devondre Campbell refused to go in the game. You cannot withhold services. You can't do that.
Yeah, and we're going to learn that the hard way. All right, Adam, thanks again.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are 1-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long.
You don't want them to go 13-0 and then lose the first round of the playoffs.
Red.
This is their last shot. They don't really have anywhere else to go yet.
Hot take.
By the time I hit, I guess what, Route 33 up here, that ticket's cashing.
Only on SportsGrid.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this. I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, "Hey, I never got the text." And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. What he texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
We have another potential Deion Sanders, a coach coming through the ranks, high school, college. maybe going to the pros. I think we may in South Florida. Also, we'll get to one of the latest bowl game mascots, and also case closed with a very popular TV judge. It's time now for Last Licks. I think Judge Judy, if I'm not mistaken, is still on the air. I think I think there are new shows with Judge Judy. I did not know that Jim Harbaugh was a huge fan of Judge Judy, who's now been on the air, I believe, for 25 years, if I'm not mistaken. Great story yesterday as they honored Judge Judy before the game. She showed up in Los Angeles wearing her Chargers gear. But I guess it is a fair question to ask if they'll do this again. Poor Judge Judy. I mean, that was one of the worst Chargers games in a long time. The Buccaneers went into L.A. and just annihilated them. But anyway, I digress. Harbaugh's a super fan of Judge Judy, had her come to maybe do a little pregame inspiration. It was not an inspiration at all, and you're going to have a hard time selling this one in the future too, especially with a blowout like this. But I guess nice statement there from the Chargers to give Judge Judy her due on the field before the game against Tampa Bay yesterday, where they gave up 40 points. Speaking of 40 points, Miami Northwestern, a team that is a high school team here where I live in South Florida, a little bit south of me, has a head coach that you may be familiar with. His name is Teddy Bridgewater, who played for Northwestern High School and also had a very nice career in the National Football League, if you remember him with the Minnesota Vikings. Well, Teddy B has brought a championship to Northwestern. It's their first state title since 2019, and they have had one of the most dominating high school seasons ever, outscoring their opponents by hundreds of points, including the championship, where they beat a team called Rains in the state of Florida, and they win by a final of 41-0. This is his first year, by the way, as head coach. So there is always some speculation. Will Teddy Bridgewater, like Deion Sanders, end up coaching somewhere in college? Maybe he ends up going to the pros. Who knows? Still his first year there. I would imagine he'll be back for another year. But don't be surprised, folks, if this is a 2-and-done or something like that. A lot of colleges, by the way, available in South Florida to coach eventually. FAU, FIU, Miami, who knows? Maybe Teddy Bridgewater is headed down that direction as well. All right, speaking of Miami, they're going to be playing Iowa State in the Pop-Tart Bowl, which is coming up. And this is the gift that keeps on giving for our show, because they revealed the trophy that is set to come out for the team that wins the Pop-Tart Bowl, and they have done such a great job marketing. It continues. What's funny about the trophy, folks, not the mascot, the trophy, is that you can actually toast Pop-Tarts in the trophy. That is correct. It's a very heavy trophy, apparently, but you can literally plug this thing in, pop in the Pop-Tarts, and create your own Pop-Tart toaster. This is insane. Let's just be honest. It's the only bowl that's anonymous, so to speak. Outside of the Fiesta Bowl, Orange Bowl, those things, Rose Bowl, right? Like, those things exist. But the Pop-Tarts Bowl's done a fantastic job with marketing. They have over the last couple of years. The game, who even knows? Who's going to win? Who's even going to play in it? I have no idea. But here's what I know. I am looking forward to seeing these players not only eat the mascot, we saw that last year, but also make their own Pop-Tarts with these new flavors. Great job by them. I think this is our third Pop-Tart Bowl story in the last month. Is that fair? Is it 2.5 at least? I give the over-under at 3. So there you go. Pop-Tart Bowl coming up later this month. All right. That'll do it for our show today. Thanks, by the way, Luke, our director, has been out. Thanks to Rob for filling in today. And thanks to Frank, of course, producing in the snow today in the Northeast as well. He's very worried about drones. I don't know why, but he is. Needless to say, thanks to our guests on the program today as well, Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report and Adam Caplan, our SportsGrid insider. And in addition, thanks to, of course, all of our guests that appear on the show each and every day. Vinnie Iyer from Sporting News was our guest today on the program. Now, for El Coast to Coast, it's coming up 3 o'clock Eastern, getting you ready for not one, but 2 games on Monday Night Football. Game time decisions following that. Pro Football today, in-game live, and then some Pro Football Today post-game. So make sure you stay tuned to that as well. So we'll be back here for our Tuesday edition of the show. We got 2 Monday Night Football games to review, and good luck to me in my fantasy football playoffs. I am up against it. I am not favored in either of my matchups, and I'm the one that has the points that needs the other team to not score the points. I hate being in that position going into Monday Night Football, but here we are. You can also download the SportsGrid app just by taking out your phone and scan this QR code, available for both iOS and Android. Some great golf content coming your way in 2026. That'll do it for the show. Enjoy the rest of your Monday and your Monday night. We'll see you back here Tuesday for our next edition of NewsWire every single Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. See you then.